There is absolutely no need for a Bantu to be a jihadist or a Christian fundamentalist. Principal Rabbi L.M. Dumizulu of Committee Hebrew Ethics here on proving that the sources of extreme religious terror are more of racial, self-hate political agenda that blinds the mind than divine mandates. It's time we put a stop to religious terror. How? By applied knowledge. The religious doctrines of Jesus and Muhammad expressed and lived by Christians and Muslims today were written for mental sight and destruction. Once in a while there comes a book that should cause us to think and consider a number of factors. We welcome this book by Baba Kanyuchi Chaite Zidehwe that deals with the scriptural origins of religious intolerance, extremism, and terror, and masking Jesus and Muhammad. And there we know the reasons why. We have to go into the details. And here we welcome him today as he demonstrates from his researches, observations, and common knowledge that Jesus originated jihad, religious intolerance, extremism, and terror versus the sublime teachings found in the books of Moses, and also that Islam photocopied that and is just an extension of the terror that was brought by the extremism found in the teachings of the Greco-Roman created Jesus. So get this book from Amazon, read it, analyze it, critique it, see how it is changing our perception and understanding of these two major religions, where he shows that the religious doctrines of Jesus and Muhammad, or Christianity and Islam, respectively, were intolerant of other religions, not inclusive of all nations of the world. It's written in the books, it's there in their books, that they were extreme and cast terror to the non-believers or were forced on unwilling global citizens, conversion by force, which is unwarranted. So get this book and study it and read it and spread it and share, so that as a people who rise up against religious terror. Let's listen to the sermon on Jesus by Baba Chaite Kanyuchi Dewe.
Sermon on Jesus' dislike or intolerance of the Gentiles. The key reason why the New Testament was to supersede the Old Testament was that the law of Moses did not provide for the Gentiles in the Hebrew covenant, or was not inclusive of all the nations of the world, the non-Hebrews or the Gentiles. Now, let's go into the law of Moses to ascertain whether the above is true or false. At Exodus, after the 10th plague, or the death of the firstborns, Moses began his teaching, and key in that teaching was that the first law in the Hebrew covenant was about the Gentiles, on how they can be part of the Hebrew covenant through circumcision, and thereafter they become part of the Hebrew family, where each law of Moses would be applied equally to the Hebrews and non-Hebrews, where the Gentiles would be treated just as Hebrews, born in the family, which was a seamless integration, and Jesus was well aware of these laws at his time. Later on, when Solomon inaugurated the temple at Jerusalem, he made a supplication for the Gentiles, for the Creator to hear their prayers from wherever geographical location such prayers were made. Prophet Isaiah also taught that the Gentiles who love the Creator, keep the law of Moses, and take hold of the covenant, they will be brought to the holy mountain of God and their sacrifices accepted, which meant that God had a spiritual plan for every living soul, Hebrews or non-Hebrews. The sermon will digress a little bit into Nelson Mandela, the first black South African president from 1994. Mandela is most remembered during his presidency for preaching tolerance and reconciliation in a post-apartheid South Africa, because he understood that the degree of racial polarization in South Africa had to be dealt with in order to bring meaningful peace to the country plus development. When Jesus began his ministry, his key message to his disciples was not to reach out to the Gentiles, whom he called dogs not worth his bread. But even in God's plan, dogs have their share of bread. And in Jesus' plan, even human beings had no share of bread. Jesus was an ethnic preacher with no love for the Gentiles. Was the Son of God unaware that all nations, including the Gentiles, were created by the Father? How come Moses knew that even the Gentiles were part of God's plan, to the extent that the law of Moses accommodated the strangers? And whoever insinuated that Jesus came for the spiritual redemption of the Gentiles, previously excluded in the Hebrew covenant or the law of Moses, was not true to the facts. And it tantalizes the mind when Gentiles flock to the intolerant teacher who called them dogs, not worth his bread, while not following the timeless and inclusive teachings of Moses. Among the listeners of this sermon are fathers and mothers, or family heads, and if their children have a warped understanding of the family value system, similar to Jesus' misunderstanding of the Father's spiritual blueprint for all nations, then such fathers and mothers are not happy with such children. And so is God.
In Matthew 7:6, Jesus said, "Do not give what is holy scriptures to Gentiles, dogs, and do not throw your pearls before swine, Gentiles, or they will trample them under their feet and in turn tear you Jews to pieces." If this is not extreme, then the following is also not extreme. Matthew 10:5, Jesus said to the 12 disciples, these 12 sent out with the following instructions: do not go among the Gentiles or enter any town of the Samaritans. So the Christians should have an understanding that their scriptures say all these things.
I will follow the timeless teachings of Moses. And what about you? What is your opinion of the preacher who called you a dog? There is a discord between what was written about Jesus and what he actually preached.
Yeah.
And the business of saying Jesus came to redeem the Gentiles was like an afterthought of the authors of the New Testament or the Roman Grecian geopolitical project.
That is what we should understand. The Roman Grecian geopolitical project codenamed Jesus, whose object was to teach Roman Christian culture globally and not the inspired teachings of Moses, because the inspired teachings of Moses, we know they came from us. They came from Africans. They came from Bantus. That's clear. Let's continue with Baba Chaitezi Kanyuchidehwe,
whose object was to teach Roman Grecian culture globally and not the inspired and timeless teachings of Moses. Read more of this in the book entitled Scriptural Origins of Religious Intolerance, Extremism and Terror, Unmasking Jesus and Muhammad, available on Amazon. I thank you.
So that's the book we encourage us to find and to read.